Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Myre, and it looks like we have the first chairman's letter for a long time. But I guess it stands to reason that because it's been a while, it's also going to be a long message. Now, I've heard some news from folks already about this and what we have to expect, but today we're going to be just going through the entire thing with you today, and maybe afterwards we'll do a summary video, but I feel like not enough people actually comb through everything. So today we're going to be reading the entire letter from the chairman today, and then as we do it, also give our own opinions and stuff. We'll be bouncing off chat live on twitch.tv/Myre as well, and hopefully, learn some stuff today. So let's go ahead and dive in. Alright, so we're going to be starting with a year in review from Chris Roberts, who quotes Phil Connors or Bill Murray from Groundhog Day, "Don't drive angry." And now I have to rewatch Groundhog Day. Anyway, so in some ways last year felt like we were stuck just like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day, repeating the same cycles as 2020. Just when we thought we were seeing light at the end of the tunnel with the COVID-19 pandemic, new variants emerged to send cases skyrocketing again and communities back into lockdown and other safety measures. The world grew increasingly weary and fatigued from the toll of both the pandemic and the necessary measures to keep people as safe as possible. And even as a large part of the world is starting to return to normal, the specter of a new potential variant that can evade the vaccines and is more transmissible haunts us. Hopefully, this is very dark already, hopefully, with readily available vaccines in most countries and a certain degree of built-in protection from prior infections, COVID will continue to transition to an endemic disease, as opposed to a pandemic one. So it's something that certainly isn't great, but not nearly as deadly as before. A virus that we can get on with our lives and live with just like the common cold or flu. So because of the ups and downs of last year, we are only just starting to get back to the office. The first studio where it became possible to start working together in person at any scale was our UK studio in Manchester, where I have been spending a lot of time since last fall. I've been working with the Squadron 42 team side by side in the office as we focus on finishing and polishing the content and features of what will be an epic narrative adventure. Our offices in Frankfurt, Austin, and Los Angeles are only just starting to return to the office now that the local authorities have deemed it safe enough to lift various requirements. At the very beginning of the pandemic, we were proud of how we transitioned seamlessly to a work-from-home environment. But as the situation dragged on, it became clear that we were missing the benefits of spontaneous collaboration and team building that come from working in person, near each other. The time I have spent with the Squadron team in the UK has only reinforced this, as the ability to walk over to someone's desk and see the issue or having a conversation in passing about a problem or creative thought makes an enormous difference to progress. When everyone is working remotely, it becomes more of a slog to problem solve on the fly, or easily get or give feedback, and you end up with far more meetings and video calls. In our internal tracking, we found that we had 6 times as many meetings when everyone was working from home than when we were all in the office. I personally felt the difference in our release cadence. It took us a little longer to get each patch out than before, and it became harder to solve or fix bugs which hung around longer than previously. I've also seen the trend in the industry as a whole, with pretty much any large title being delayed, or in some unfortunate cases, released before they should have been. For this reason, despite our ability to work fully remote, we are focused on getting people back together, working with each other side by side for extended periods. Going back to the office does not mean a return to the old work patterns and policies, as the extended lockdowns combined with working remotely for 2 years has given us new insights into work-life balance for our staff. We have altered our global work policy to allow for flexi hours and a hybrid of in-person and work from home, depending on both an employee's and manager's needs, with emphasis on being cognizant of our employees' life situations. Despite the challenges of last year, I am proud of how much we accomplished in 2021. In fact, looking back at the year in review, I'm amazed at the amount of content and features we delivered to our players. In January of last year, the community was able to play the first iteration of the Xenothreat Incursion, our first dynamic event that players praised for bringing together the pieces of Star Citizen for a thrilling server-wide encounter. While only our first iteration, this event already showed glimpses of the full promise of the persistent universe. In April of 2021, we released Alpha 313 Underground Infamy and delivered drive-in caves and sinkholes, planet tech improvements, ship-to-station docking, and more. With Invictus Launch Week, we opened the doors of the Javelin for the first time to let people take a walking tour of the mighty UEE destroyer, and brought the Bengal into orbit to showcase our biggest capital ship yet in the verse. It's so big it has a train. So, however, we really started to hit our stride in the second half of 2021 with the release of Alpha 314, Welcome to Orison, when we finished the stand-in system by launching the Gas Giant Crusader and the landing zone of Orison. Accompanying that were a host of quality of life improvements and our first iteration of volumetric clouds. Right now we have volumetric clouds in everything apart from ArcCorp and all the moons. So then, with Alpha 315 Deadly Consequences, we introduced version 0 of our medical gameplay. Looting, bombing, and personal inventory, just to name a few features. Coupled with our continuing improvements in performance and stability, and the drastic reduction in server crashes, which usually manifest themselves to a user as the infamous 30k error connection lost to server. Star Citizen, the game, was finally starting to come together in a way it had never done before. And as great as our 2020 year was in terms of engagement and sentiment, the back half of 2021 was at another level. We saw more people than ever before flocking to Star Citizen, carried in on waves of goodwill and excitement from current players asking their friends to join, and from the complete newcomers, awed by the spectacle of Crusader, the gameplay of Xenothreat, and the opportunities from new features like personal inventory and looting. And to cap off the year, when we launched Alpha 316 Return to Jumptown, veteran players returned to see our fresh new take on the classic Jumptown Emergent Battlegrounds, and were amazed at just how far the game had progressed. Our wins in 2021 set us up for an absolutely historic start to 2022. So far, we have blown past all our projections on new players joining the verse. In fact, this year we have more than doubled our rate of new user acquisition. And with the recent launch of Alpha 317 Fueling Fortunes, we are seeing over 2,000 new players a day joining the verse. Our daily active users has grown by over 50% since the numbers I shared in my last letter from the chairman in December 2020. And with this latest patch, we're enjoying double the daily login traffic of our last April patch launch. We're enjoying monthly active users, which is well beyond the highs of 2020. And we will have nearly 1 million new accounts created since then, and more than 500,000 new pledging players join the game. And this week, we had our 2 millionth unique player log in to play Star Citizen. We are on track this year to break 4 million total accounts, over 1 million unique logins this year, and more than $500 million in lifetime revenue. I was like, oh wow, $500. Wow. Okay. So all of this is due to the incredible support we receive from you, combined with the progress we have been making in Star Citizen, which brings new curious gamers into the verse. It is heartwarming to see the feedback and impressions from new members of the community when they first start playing Star Citizen. For all of those of us that have been around from the start, it is easy to take for granted a lot of the features that SC has, that no other game does. After all, we all know every feature, its bugs, and more importantly, what is not done, so it can be easy to focus on the cup half empty, rather than full. But what other game has the combination of scale and detail, that the ability to seamlessly go from on foot to onboard a fully realized ship with functioning components and a livable interior you can move around, take off towards a twinkling pinprick of light in the sky, up through the clouds into the blackness of outer space, only to get intercepted by a group of pirates looking to liberate your cargo from you, best them in an intense dogfight, and continue your journey towards the twinkling light in the distance. That becomes another planet that you can enter its atmosphere and land on, lower your ramp and walk out into a bustling city or beautiful riverbank nestled in trees to harvest some alien fruit, all without loading screens and rendered in incredible millimeter detail in either first person or third person. There are other games that have some of these elements, but none of them have everything with the level of fidelity that SC offers. Sometimes it isn't a bad thing to look back and appreciate just how far we've come. We get a lot of flack for timelines and schedules, especially when the original crowdfunding campaign is brought up. But the game that is being built today is a completely different and far more expansive and immersive game than I pitched almost 10 years ago. Back then, there were no fully realized planets rendered with incredible detail that you could go anywhere on. Planets were only visitable if they had a crafted landing location, and even then, there was a debate whether they would be explorable in the first person or if they would be more like landing zones in Freelancer and Privateer, where you could click between a few locations to buy or sell goods or pick up missions in a bar. There was no conception of a first-person system that is as tactile and fully formed as we are making today, nor a vehicle simulation that had physical components and the level of systemic functionality that we are striving for. The game being built today is a game that encompasses many. It is a dogfighting space sim. It is a first-person shooter. It is a trading game, a resource collecting game, a resource management game, an adventure game, a survival game, and a social game. Star Citizen is a universe sim. It is a game for everyone, as in real life, there are many different paths to walk, and success is defined by what makes you happy. Do you want to prove your abilities as a fearsome combat pilot? The game has that for you. But equally, if you just want to quietly mine minerals and make your fortune, or hang out in a landing zone, or find a corner of the galaxy that no one else has found, all of these are options in the sandbox that Star Citizen is. To do this right, at the scale that will allow millions of people to play together, takes time and money. And with your support and patience, we are able to build a game that I do not think any other publisher could afford to do or would be crazy enough to commit to. Many that have financially supported Star Citizen do not care about profits or quarterly earnings. They just want the best and biggest game possible, one that lives up to their expectations and dreams. While that is no small task, it is something that is far easier for myself and everyone at CIG to put all our effort into, as it is a privilege to be challenged artistically and supported financially in this manner. I am immensely grateful to have so many people put so much faith in all of us. Thank you. So that was the, just like the retrospective, right? Like the year in review. So that's that part. I think we're going to cut this into sections so that, like, if there's any other parts, you can just click on it on YouTube and go to it. Okay. Anyway, quick water break. Your latex, thank you for the 8 months. Alright, now that brings us to the road to 4.0. So, back in December 2017, Star Citizen Alpha 3.0 was published to the live servers after a unified push from our developers around the globe. This monumental patch introduced our brand new procedural planetary technology and the first planetary bodies that you could land on and go anywhere across the surface of the 3 moons of Crusader. It also included a new mission system, improved shopping, new cargo mechanics, and doubled our server player cap from like 24 to 50. To date, Star Citizen 3.0 was probably the biggest incremental jump in gameplay and content, which is why we incremented the alpha designation from 2.x to 3.x, and it was a whole 8 months between 2.6.3 and 3.0. And what an 8 months that was. I still get hives. Anyway, so this year we find ourselves on a similar path with 3 huge technology initiatives that will fundamentally change the experience and immersion into Star Citizen. The first of these is what we are calling persistent entity streaming, which is the foundational tech that enables server meshing. So persistent entity streaming is the hardest part of the work needed for server meshing and is one that has required the most engineering. It fundamentally changes how we record state in the universe and delivers a level of persistence that you just don't see in other games, whether they are MMOs or even single-player experiences. Up to now, all persistence in the game has been tied to a player's inventory. Ships you own or items you hold physically or in the virtual inventories of items you own. If you physically attached an item inside your vehicle, say a rifle to a weapon rack, when you log out or stow the vehicle, it'll remember all the attached items and anything in that vehicle's virtual inventory. However, if you drop or place something loosely, even inside a ship you own, it won't be associated with any player inventory. So when you log out, or if the server crashes, the item will not be there when relogging or rejoining. With persistent entity streaming, we are recording the state of every dynamic object in the game, irrelevant of whether it is owned or held by a player. That means you could drop a gun or a med pen in a forest on Microtech and return several days later after logging out to find the gun or medipen or coffee cup still there, assuming another player didn't grab them. And then download this image for better readability. Yes, we will do just that and open this image in a new tab and see what the heck this is meant to be. So it's a timeline of all the tech pieces that have come together to make Star Citizen. So we're not going to go through everything, but as you can see here, we had the client-side streaming stuff, which made loading much faster with Megamap. We had object container streaming, we had server migration server migration stuff, and then just work that's being done and has been done for persistent streaming. You know, things that go over my head, like the Entity Authority Transfer Framework, and all this other stuff. But I'll just leave this here for a second and have a cheeky water break. Charts. But yeah, okay. But where are we going? So today we are over here with this orange dot. So apparently they want the first build on the PTU with this new system in this year some point. Probably around Q3, Q4. It does look as if they want persistent streaming in for 3.18, which makes sense because 3.18 is when that cargo refactor is going to be coming in. They talked about loose cargo not necessarily working the way it should do right now for all ships. Now, I say for all ships because some of this tech has been put in loosely into the game. You can drop any item you want in a carrack and put the carrack away, and then spawn the carrack in on a different server, and that, you know, like candy bar you dropped on the floor will still be there. So some of that stuff is in, but it's not in on every ship or in every instance, and certainly it isn't on available like outside of ships and on stations and or outside planet side and that kind of thing. So that's the next step. And again, it's important for 3.18 and the new cargo refactor, because right now when you buy cargo, the cargo just spawns into a grid. With 3.18, the idea, I believe, is that you're supposed to just grab cargo boxes and then drop them loosely and stack them the way you want to on those same cargo grids. So that's very important. But it does look like sometime in the future we're going to be getting server meshing, and they're going to start planning and working on dynamic server meshing, which we'll just see here. So the future plans are separating the replication layer into a horizontal scalable service, as well as working on a dynamic DGS mesh that allows nodes to dynamically scale up and down and split simulation into dynamic areas, basically allowing the service to be more flexible when it comes to this persistence they want into the game. It's a lot of technical talk here, which is why I didn't read through it all, because it's going to go over my head. All right, so let's go ahead and continue with the letter from the chairman then, shall we? Okay. So, regarding the thing above, the technology to do so at scale for a universe as large and detailed as ours for millions of players is no small feat of engineering. We have been working towards this goal since 2019, and we debuted server-side object container streaming, or SOCS, which allowed a server to only stream in and simulate only a portion of our universe, which is necessary if you're going to have multiple servers simulate different parts of the universe. The development has not been without road bumps. We have had to change our plans for how we would persist the state of the universe when we realized that the back-end relational database we were planning on using with a host of services which we had collectively dubbed iCache would likely not be able to have low latency at the scale we needed for the number of concurrent players we will need to support in the future. So if you want to have more than 50 people in like your massive universe, you're going to have more bandwidth, and you have to have the correct framework for it, is what I'm reading here. So we pivoted to using a graph database at the start of 2021, taking a different approach to the services and cache, which we outlined in a virtual presentation during last year's CitizenCon. The current architecture uses what we call the replication layer, which is a scalable data cache that tracks the state of all dynamic objects in the universe, runs in the cloud, and communicates with the cloud-based graph database, which we call the entity graph. This ultimately is the final authority on the state of all dynamic objects in our universe. The replication layer, which is a separate service and is in its final form, will have multiple worker nodes based on player concurrency, allows us to track and communicate the state of the universe in real time, and separates the simulation from state. This is especially important for scalability, as clients do not need to wait for a server to simulate to see state change around them, as both clients and servers communicate their results into the replication layer, which is then reflected to all clients. Because the replication layer service does not need to simulate, it can communicate state change to clients at a fixed frequency and is not bound to simulation time, which should lead to a better experience for players, which I think is the big thing for all of us here reading and listening here. A better experience is what we want. So for PES to work, both the entity graph and replication layer need to be functional. In terms of engineering, this was the biggest technical challenge and required a fundamental reworking of how the game handles authority and state change of entities. In addition, a whole host of new online services were needed to support the replication layer and the entity graph. To support PES, we needed to create 12 new services. For server meshing, only 4 more services are currently planned. So you can see just how much foundational tech for server meshing is in PES. As part of this, we switched to gRPC, which is an open source, scalable Google-sponsored data protocol for online communication. The nice aspect of using tech like this is that it is designed to scale. Just imagine how many concurrent users Google must handle. And there are lots of available third-party tools and code compared to creating an internal custom protocol. All this means that getting persistent energy streaming to work would require the bulk of the tech we need to make server meshing viable. I am happy to report that after 16 months of extremely focused work by 18 engineers, 3 dedicated QA and 4 producers spread between CIG and Turbulent, who are managing the back-end's database in the cloud and its related services, that the team were able to demonstrate persistent entity streaming working last week in our weekly internal persistent universe update meeting, which is probably why we have this letter in the first place. Okay, so for those in the back, including myself, I believe this is the key here to all this, is that they've been working a long time now on engine work, just pure math, just pure server tech and all this stuff to make sure that Star Citizen as we have it right now, which has 50 people in it, which has a game you can hop in, do stuff and leave, like to make that leap to becoming a game like World of Warcraft, or maybe like New World even, because that may be a easier connection, to make it a game like that, but with increased persistence to make it something more akin to No Man's Sky, but an MMO. They've done it. At least they've done a very crucial part of it now. Now, when you're in the game with this tech, once it's in the live environment, if you were to drop something, say, out in the desert of Hurston, and you were to come back next week, you'd see it there, provided that, you know, it wasn't cleaned up if someone else has tried to do the same thing, and that kind of thing. So, it's a massive milestone for CIG. It's tech that, and it's always weird to me, because they're like, we want to make this thing. And I'm like, sure, okay, what is it? It's this. It's highly complicated, and we want to make it. And it's like, okay, but how are you so sure you can make it? Is always a thing in my mind, but they did it. Math hell, exactly. So, Paul Randell, our director of engineering for online tech, spun up a server, populated the entity graph to its initial state along with the replication layer, which is essentially an in-memory cache for the universe state backend databases that exists in the cloud to make sure read writes to the database do not bottleneck servers and clients. Then connected a client, placed down a series of small objects like cans on the surface of Aberdeen, along with an 890 jump and an anvil arrow. He then killed the server and the client. The server was restarted. We did not populate the entity graph as it had been previously seeded on the initial startup, and then connected a client, warped to Aberdeen, and everything was there as he placed it. This was a huge milestone as the state of the universe was recorded to the back-end database, and then when he restarted the server, it just connected to the replication layer, which had initialized itself from the database, the entity graph, and continued with the universe at the state he left it. So that's pretty massive, and again, to reiterate, essentially a lot of math hell went into making like 3 different layers of just monitoring the game, so that like when you're playing the game, you know, you're in this live layer, right? Like when you're doing stuff and stuff happens. Then there are 2 other layers that record what happened, so that if your server was just to crash and you relog, the layer is recording all that, then go, yeah, you left off right there. And so that's done now. So that means that, like, you know, down the line, when you are doing something like something tedious, like let's say moving 1,000 boxes in a hull E, or just on a planet side and you are trying to, you know, for one reason or another, run cross country, like on Hurston. If, you know, the server crashes and you are no longer there, your, you know, like your rescue vehicle is no longer there, the box you placed there to, you know, to landmark that I was the guy who was there, they disappear. But now, when you reconnect to the server, it's all going to be there again. So essentially, it's going to be making Star Citizen that persistent game that they've always wanted it to be, you know? And I hope I made sense of that, because I realized that, like, it's really warm, it's almost summer, and I'm dying. Anyway, quick water break, I apologize. Alright. So, Chris says, that may not sound revolutionary to some of you, because of course you might say, well, in No Man's Sky, which is a single-player game, I can drop something and my game crashes and the stuff is back. But I can tell you that it was akin to Neil Armstrong taking one small step. Once persistent entity streaming comes online, SC will be a different universe. Full persistence will provide over the coming years an experience in gaming that most other online games do not provide. A universe you can escape to, that is affected by you and your and other players' actions, with a state being dynamic and persistent. Crash land on a planet and your shipwreck will persist, while you forage for your food and water to survive, and perhaps wood to make a fire to keep warm. Please don't promise any more features, Chris. Because I want that now. Okay, log off and come back to what you built. Or perhaps, once you have been rescued, another player will stumble onto the wreck of your old ship and the long-extinguished campfire. Find a corner of the galaxy to make your own, collect resources and import material to build your outpost, decorate or arrange your hangar or home how you like. So essentially, without this tech, you know, the idea of homesteading, the idea of using a pioneer from CNOU to like make your own base would have been like just a pie in the sky thing. this is the tech that they need to actually realize the dreams that they were trying to do this entire time. So with this tech in place, server meshing becomes possible, as the replication layer of an entity graph is the universe state that the clients and servers write and read from. Because we have decoupled state from simulation, this allows us to have many server nodes all communicating with the replication layer, responsible for simulation of focused areas in the universe, which allows us to scale our ability to simulate the overall universe, as a server is no longer responsible for every non-player entity, regardless of location or number. This means that instead of a server dropping to 5 frames per second due to simulation load, we just spin up another server, and then another to spread the simulation load and keep the update tick rate high. This is the ultimate goal of dynamic server meshing, and what we are working towards. Now, a fundamental change to how state is recorded, especially one that affects every dynamic object, not just a select few, is going to have a lot of edge cases and issues that we have not come across yet or foreseen. I already have one. So right now we have like 50 players in a server, right? And say that number doesn't really ever change, we just have like server meshing so that like when you have 51 people, that next person is on a shard, but everything they do there then gets put onto that replication layer, right? If I was to drop a candy bar somewhere on the floor, will that candy bar now just appear somewhere on somebody else's server? Or like, how will that work? What if somebody tries to build something in the exact same place I want to build something, if they are on a different simulation that's also being read from this like this replication layer? I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Anyway. So that's that for that long article, The Road to 4.0. And again, I'm not sure if I closed it. I must have done. Let me go ahead and open this in a new tab real quick. So now that we have that as background, they want persistent streaming to be in 3.18. And then the server meshing itself will be the dawn of 4.0. And that's when the game is going to be a lot more like an MMO. That's when the game is going to, again, have another paradigm shift, the same as we had from 2.0 to 3.0. That's when, you go out there and you leave something. It's going to be there for everybody to see, like if they want to go and check it out. I look forward to it. I can think of a whole bunch of emergent games and stuff we can do with it. Imagine like I go somewhere like on Hurston and I drop a box there and I say the first person to find this box wins something. That could be kind of cool, like it kind of opens up a lot of dynamic things you can do with yourself and with friends and organizations and communities. Okay. All right, so 2022 testing and release cadence. So because of this, we are going to be approaching 3.18 differently than our previous releases. We are anticipating that 3.18 will require a much longer time in the Evocati PTU phase than our previous releases, due to the fundamental change in how the game tracks state. We know we will also need testing at scale, as in our experience we see different issues when we go from internal testing to Evocati to PTU Wave 1, then 2, and so on. Players do crazy things, and lots of players creates lots of crazy cases that we have not considered, which exposes bugs and edge cases. Our guess is that it may be as long as 3 months in the PTU stage, but it is hard to predict. For instance, will the universe turn into a nightmare version of WALL-E? Because everyone just throws empty boxes on the ground? Or dumps the 10 AI bodies they've looted on New Babbage Commons? We're working on what we call a density manager to manage the objects that get recorded and clean up the lower priority ones. For instance, a discarded empty bottle or can. When too many are in one area. But I suspect we will also have to implement AI janitors and perhaps even crime stats for littering in landing zones like New Babbage and ArcCorp. Now actually, since 3.15, since the introduction of medical gameplay and personal inventory, whenever you die, you get a new medical gown. You also get a new like a Voyager like a undersuit and helmet. The amount of like Stonehenges and like things, just cairns of like of these boxes around landing zones are already so damn high on servers that like really only have lifespans of maybe like 2 days or less. So I can imagine when we get to this stage, it's gonna be ridiculous. They're gonna really have to have this tech in, otherwise it's gonna be some kind of bizarro world where we just have like mountains of these gowns everywhere. But that's for 3.18. So of course, they said here that it's gonna take almost an entire quarter of PTU work just to see this done. However, they've had the first instances of this already done and working in their own private environments, as we saw before, and that's big news. So, as it did not make much sense to engineer the revamped physical cargo system and salvage for the old system, these two features have been engineered for the persistent entity streaming system. You want wrecks from player battles to stick around so you can salvage, and that will arrive with 3.18. That's big. That's really big. So, up until this paragraph, I honestly thought that when we get salvage, they're just gonna spawn in random wrecks the same way you have random rocks for mining. But it seems that with 3.18, they want to do something with what they call death masks for ships. When you blow up a ship, it breaks up into pieces, but those pieces aren't actually the ship. It's a death mask, right? Of just like bits of the ship that look like the ship, but aren't really taxing on the server. That's gonna have to change if they want that to then become a wreck for you to salvage later, no? So that's rather big. And that's big news for salvagers, because we're going to be getting FPS and also salvage with the Drake Vulture come 3.18 as well. Anybody else feel sick? I hate being excited about things like this. All right. So, however, we do not sick in a good way, but also a bad way, because I don't know. The carrot is too big. The carrot is too strong, guys. Alright, so however, we do not want engagement and content to stall because of our persistent entity streaming requirements being longer in testing, so we're planning to release a content-rich Alpha 3.17.2 patch with known stable code, new missions, that's huge, new locations, and other gameplay in late June. The vast majority of players, hundreds of thousands of them in fact, are here to simply play on live. You know, like many people do just play SC as a game. And for them, we want to keep giving them engaging new gameplay and adventures to enjoy simultaneously while we test 3.18 at scale on the PTU. It sounds to me like they want to open up 3.18 to everybody, but also have a live environment to actually play as well. So, the goal will be to get 2 to 3 months of testing on 3.18 and PTU for an Alpha 3.18 release to live in late Q3. I know many of you have been waiting for salvage, physicalized cargo, and persistent entity streaming for a long time, and I'm excited to see us in the home stretch to finally bring it to you. I think 3.18 will be an amazing update that is an even bigger game changer than 3.15 was, but we want to make sure we give it the proper time to test so we can deliver it to you at the best quality possible. Alright, so alongside our persistent streaming work, the engine and graphic teams have been making great progress on the second big technical initiative we've been working on in the past 2 years, a complete replacement of our graphics engine with what we call Gen 12, which is multi-threaded and much more efficient approach to rendering, which gets the most out of modern graphics APIs like Vulkan. This allows us to utilize the modern graphics power of PCs more efficiently and not tie up the main game update loop with waiting around for draw call submissions and the like. We're looking at getting the bulk of this functionality for the live release of 3.18, with the release of the Vulkan functionality a little later, but hopefully by the end of the year. This leaves us with our third large technical initiative, server meshing. Alright. And another water break. Alright. So as you might have guessed, we'll also approach server meshing in much the same way that we are rolling our persistent entity streaming. Star Citizen Alpha 4.0 will be a truly new era in Star Citizen. It'll mean our final tech building block, server meshing, will have been delivered. And they've had these building blocks, for the longest time, since like 2016, as these are the things we want. And this is the final one. The first implementation will be what we call static server meshing, where every server is given a defined area to simulate. But as soon as static server meshing is stable, we will move towards dynamic server meshing, with subsequent releases which will allow much more scalability, as servers will not be bound by location, but instead be distributed by load, allowing for much better simulation performance in any given area of the universe. So essentially, like, from what I understand, with server meshing, they want to be able to have like one server just instead of, so right now we have one server per like simulation of the Stanton system. So one server that's catering to not only Crusader, but also to New Babbage, to also, like the Aaron Halo. One server is doing all of that right now in Star Citizen, with object container streaming, just, culling things where players are not. So in a server where you have tons of players everywhere around its map, the server is much slower and just handles much worse than if, let's say, people are doing something like the Stanton 7, where you have 50 people racing in one place. So the idea is with static server meshing is that they want one server to be able to not, just handle the entirety of the Stanton system, but maybe perhaps, and we don't know the scale of it just yet, but maybe perhaps handle maybe every planetary system as its thing. So like, one server is doing the Hurston system, one server is doing the Crusader system, and then one server is doing deep space, and then they'll be handing off the player to each server as they travel. And then once that's done, they want to be able to then make it so that a server will be able to handle a given area instead, and that area might be dynamic, because what if you have 75 people in, let's say, a Javelin or something, or another capital ship? You will need to have more resources for that instance, so for that scenario, right? So that's what they want after that. So with 4.0, we'll get our second star system, Pyro, and we begin the process of adding more and more content, gameplay, and polish to get us to beta. For all of us at CIG, server meshing in 4.0 represent taking that next big leap to populating the verse with the promise of content and gameplay that will turn Star Citizen into the rich living universe that exceeds the promise we set before us those many years ago. Our current goal is to introduce server meshing in 4.0 as an early technical preview to Evo Kati testers in PTU at the end of Q4 this year. That's sooner than I thought when it said the future. Allowing our most ardent players to help us start testing server meshing so we can refine and polish it for release. This is heavily conditioned on how well and easy the persistent entity streaming rollout goes. So be warned that this has a high chance of slipping into Q1 next year once server meshing starts to see real-world testing with thousands of players in PTU. We will be getting a better idea of how much time it'll need to cook in the PTU before it can make its way to live. We're aiming for the end of Q1 2023, but again, we really will not know with confidence until it hits testing. So until maybe a couple months from now. This special 2022 release cadence will not be particularly unusual to most players if you pull back and look at it in a broad sense. We will still have 4 big end-of-quarter releases, as well as 2 big mid-quarter releases for Fleet Week in May and IAE in November. Players who are not steeped in our development process will still enjoy and experience rapid content releases every quarter as we get into the second half of 2022. You will see a lot more meaningful gameplay making its way into the verse, with another run of Xenothreat, updates to Jumptown, new dynamic events, additional locations and points of interest to explore, and more patch updates. There will be no shortage of gameplay and content to experience. And by year's end, players will be able to enjoy persistent streaming, salvage, Cargo Refactor, and Bounty Hunter version 2 gameplay on live. Meanwhile, those who are following our development closest and providing the critical service of helping us test our biggest tech will be able to get their hands on the persistent streaming and server meshing this year, as we put them into test in 3.18 and 4.0 in PTU during the summer and winter respectively. Sometimes the wait can be the hardest when we are closest to the finish line, but this year I am so excited to share our release plans for our key tech building blocks, and I know many of you cannot wait to jump into the PTU and start testing later this year. So yeah, they've finally hit that milestone, and with it, the cadence of, you know, like quarterly patches and stuff like that is going to change slightly, with 3.18 not being out until maybe the end of quarter 3. All in all, it's a slightly more exciting time for people who are, like, you know, backing Star Citizen, as this isn't the finish line, but this is kind of the end to a very long, rocky road of, you know, oh, this feature is currently in the, you know, in development in the back end to make whatever it is that the game is going to eventually be. Like, even if the game is still in alpha come 4.0, which it will be, it still means that when you play the game, you can just Alt F4, go take a dump, come back, and you'll be exactly where you were. Your mission's going to be there, your items are going to be there. It's going to be a game, and it already is a game, but it's going to be that much more of an MMO. It's going to be that much more of a persistent, you know, like a game. But yeah. Alright, so we have some updates from Manchester, England as well. So we do know that they recently purchased this area, and I believe they can house like 1,000 devs. Their current Manchester office is like 3 floors or something. This one here you can see is like 9 or more. I'm not counting, can't be asked. But yeah, that's a lot. Let's go ahead and have some images and have a look and see what's going on here. Just, you know, nice images of the show floor, and I'm gonna just click through them as I take another cheeky water break. But yeah. Hey, look at that. That's cool. I haven't seen that before. I wonder if JRDF did that. That's a spaceman in full Odyssey armor. However, it could just... I'm dumb. So it could be real, but it's likely just a 3D render of the space. I'm dumb. That's cool. Like, they have like screens there that look like it's a New Babbage. A cool, hip, fun place to work. It looks kind of like the G-Log bar. And oh, it's thematic. This is the Voyager bar. Kind of want to work at CIG now. As what you ask. I wonder if they're taking streamers. Okay. So, building for longevity. So, it is easy to only focus on our development progress and the Just trying to get... There we go. It is easy to only focus on our development progress and the work we have ahead in building Star Citizen and Squadron 42. But there is another very important element of our journey that is often overlooked. Not only are we building 2 hugely ambitious games to rival anything released by the biggest AAA studios, but we've had to build the company to build the technology and make the games from scratch at the same time. The day I stepped out on the stage at GDC, we had no formal employees. 3 founders in Ortwin, Sandy and myself, and a handful of people that had helped, like Forrest Steffen, David Haddock, and David Swafford. Sometimes moonlighting from their day job, with permission of course, like Ben Lesnick, Hans Apple, Sean Tracy, and Paul Reindell. And a few friends from my old Origin and Digital Anvil days, like Sergio Rosas and his CGBot art outsourcing company, to create the demo and build the website. Today, we have 780 people on staff, plus an extended family of over 130 working closely with us at Turbulent in Montreal, with many more that will join us in the coming months. We have a 7-person global talent acquisition team that focuses exclusively on trying to hire the best talent possible for CIG. To give you an idea of the scale of TA work, They helped us hire 168 people in 2021, and so far this year have helped us recruit 128 people already. In 2022, we will continue to grow in all departments, increasing our headcounts to approximately 840 and bring us closer to release for Star Citizen and Squadron 42. One challenge we have been facing is that we have nowhere near enough room at several of our studios for new hires that joined us during the pandemic. Because of this, we signed long-term leases on 2 offices in brand new and state-of-the-art buildings in Manchester and Frankfurt last year. We are now only months away from opening the 2 new offices, but both of which will create world-class collaboration spaces and house our ever-growing team. Our new studio in the UK will deliver 90,000 square foot of state-of-the-art creative studio space over the three top floors of Manchester Goods Yard. So it's not the entire building, it's still 3 floors like their old building, as well as 2 stages in the adjacent Manchester studios and bonded warehouse complex. A dedicated motion performance and capture with a suite of changing rooms, a green room, machine room, scanning room, and viewing gallery, along with a smaller stage for global video production, which will have a dedicated set and be well set up for filming a vast array of content for Star Citizen and later on Squadron 42's launch. So up until this point, they've had to partner with, I believe, Andy Serkis's Imaginarium in Derby. So now they're going to be having their own studios in Manchester. It's going to allow them to streamline a lot of the animation stuff going forwards for both Star Citizen, but also Squadron 42 and also subsequent Squadron 42, like patches or like episodes. So in Frankfurt, we will be moving into 30,000 square feet over 2 floors at The One, with spectacular views high above the city skyline, which is double our current space in Frankfurt and should situate us well for any near-term growth there. We're also looking at the next location for our Austin studio, which is tiny, for a potential move in late next year, as we need more space there as well. And after this, we'll look to upgrade the LA studio too. We're building long-term homes that will provide the facilities to keep the universe alive and expanding for decades to come. And now here's their Frankfurt, Germany place. So again, that's The One, they call it, and that's the top floor they're going to be on. Because, space game, they need all the sky they can get, or something. Just hear some images of The One for those interested. Try and back out again. There we go. The more I back out, the higher it goes. There we go. That's crazy. It has to be hella expensive. I mean, backers keep buying, Anyone fancy a Legionnaire? That's what your Legionnaire is funding, I guess, End of the day. Oh, it has the new Babbage Transit loot. Okay, so it looks like the Manchester office is going to be themed around Crusader, whereas the Frankfurt office is going to be themed around Microtech. With an RSI themed lounge that looks like a almost Origin-esque, but it's more like a blueprinty kind of thing. It says Bar Citizen in the back there. The bar is called Bar Citizen. Okay, really cool. All right, next up, CitizenCon. Did I just break everything? I did. Give me 1 second to unbreak everything. Okay, so shows such as CitizenCon are huge undertakings that require lots of planning, and although life is slowly returning to normal, restrictions are only just now lifting. And as cases are still largely unpredictable, we see that planning big shows may still be a bit premature. The uncertainty surrounding resumed normality has impacted our ability to plan a physical show. Traditionally, we would already be deep in planning and execution of CitizenCon today, if we were going to hold an event this October. However, we have not been able to do so yet. It does seem many of our peers in the industry are encountering similar conundrums, as E3 only recently cancelled their physical show. In addition, Los Angeles, where we would hold this year's show, tends to be very cautious and is more apt to impose restrictions on large in-person gatherings in the event of a new variant blowing up. Because of this, combined with the huge amount of work the company is trying to deliver this year, not to mention moving 70% of the company into 2 new offices, we have decided to not hold a physical CitizenCon this year. We very much hope that next year we'll be able to commit to an in-person event, as we miss the opportunity to mix in person with all of you and be invigorated by your enthusiasm and excitement. At the same time though, we know we could not have come this far without our community, and we are grateful for each and every one of you that has supported us along this journey. It being our 10th anniversary as a company and a community, we're going to be celebrating virtually with a virtual CitizenCon like we did last year. One difference to last year is that there will be no keynote gameplay demo to headline this event, as this will pull valuable resources away from our game development teams that are working hard to get persistent streaming, Gen 12 Vulkan and server meshing into your hands, not to mention also delivering more of the content and gameplay that has proven so successful to bringing in new players and retaining old and new users alike. Okay, hopefully there's a but. So instead, CitizenCon will be a celebration of you, the community, with presentations and panels from our developers to share with you the progress we're making on and the near future of what you can expect from Star Citizen in the year ahead. And as I noted back in my December 2020 letter, we are still going to be quiet on Squadron 42 until it is time to start the release campaign. So no briefing room until like sometime next year. Or later, who knows. And we are not quite there yet. Know that progress is coming along nicely, but we're not quite ready to pull the curtain back on Squadron just yet. Okay. So, let's go back here real quick. So, no keynote. So that means no massive gameplay show off. You know, like last year's CitizenCon, they showed off going down to like a random outpost, doing a stealth mission, going to talk to this NPC who gave them like a artifact, and then go ahead and like run away from NPCs or whatever. With a couple different like states of that same mission. So we're not gonna have that this year, which is kind of disappointing, but last year wasn't huge anyway. But at least we'll be getting more insight as to what's to come. But it certainly does put a damper on CitizenCon because, CitizenCon used to be our big imagine moment of the year. But yeah, we'll see how it is regardless. All right, so Bar Citizen World Tour. It has been more than 2 years since we have had the opportunity to spend time with all of you in person. And while we will not be together for CitizenCon, we cannot hold out another year. For that reason, we plan to kick off a robust Bar Citizen World Tour this summer, perfectly coinciding with the in-lore holiday First Contact Day. Definitely read up on the backstory to see why this fits us so nicely. Maybe we'll have that as a lore post at some point on the channel. So we would also like to take this perfect opportunity to coin a new out-of-game annual holiday, International Bar Citizen Day. We will celebrate this inaugural new holiday by hosting Bar Citizen events simultaneously near all our development studios in mid-June. Details on when and where coming very soon. This almost seems kind of what's the word now? I mean, sure, having an international meetup will increase the incidence of variants or whatever, but like it's still kind of incentivizing people to show up and mingle, so that's kind of like counterintuitive, I feel. But anyway, it'd be cool for those who want to do that kind of thing. Anyway, after that, we plan to branch out and bring the fun to events that may not be as close to our studios. Our community team is planning to embrace Bar Citizens around the globe with renewed vigor, bringing goodies and developers with them to greet and mingle with all of you as part of the celebration of our 10th anniversary. Keep a close eye on Spectrum in the weeks to come, as the team will begin exploring which Bar Citizen events to attend. So if you are hosting your own event, we want to hear from you. So essentially, this is like a reach out to the community. If you are hosting a bar citizen, then reach out to CIG. Just like we've had things before in the UK, like CitizenCon, and then, you know, devs like Brian Chambers would show up and talk about the game with us. They're extending that olive branch again to the community, and they're going to be having this, which is kind of cool. All right, so final thoughts. So while some of you will no doubt be disappointed to hear the news about no physical show and no keynote demo at CitizenCon, the team and I felt it was much more important that we focus on making development progress so that we could maintain the pace of delivery we have been hitting since Alpha 3.14. This year is a big one for all of us at Star Citizen. You can expect to see Invictus launch week moving into the clouds of Crusader, the promise of persistent entity streaming making its way to the verse, as well as big game-changing features like salvage, physicalized cargo, bounty hunting V2, couldn't come soon enough, new events and missions, enhancements to Jumptown ships I know you're waiting on like the Corsair, the Vulture, and Hull C, as well as more quality of life and new player onboarding improvements to make Star Citizen even more playable and welcoming than it is today. And that is without mentioning Pyro and server meshing, which we are aggressively working towards letting you test by the end of year, pending how difficult it is to get persistent entity streaming stable. We think you would all rather be playing this new content than hearing about it, so we will use our time this year to focus on development and delivering to you the tech, features, and content you're waiting for. The developers at CIG tends to get a lot of attention, which is well deserved as it is the most talented development team I have ever worked with. But there are a lot more people beyond development at CIG. As they say, it takes a village. Cloud Industrial Village. So without our publishing and live ops team, the servers would not be up 24/7 in the cloud, and you would not be able to download or play Star Citizen. Without our quality assurance team's tireless testing and feedback, Star Citizen would be unplayable. Without the backend and web teams at Turbulence, you would not be able to log on, have a website to read news and information, or a forum to participate in healthy debate on. Wink. Pledge or launch Star Citizen. Without our studio experience team looking after the health of our organization, there would not be a creative environment as ambitious as Star Citizen. Without our finance and legal teams, we could not have built a company as unique and groundbreaking as CIG. Without our marketing and community teams, there would not be any communication about our plans, no dazzling trailers to tease and excite about future content, and no real back and forth between community and CIG. Without our community support and player experience teams, you would not get the help you need nor the ability to give feedback and gameplay in a way that can be quantified. Without our IT departments, we would not be able to work together, whether in the office or from home, nor would be able to compile code or create beautiful assets. Without our people departments, there would be nobody that is here to hire, listen, guide, and help our staff. And without you, with your enthusiasm and patience, there would be no Star Citizen, Squadron 42, or Cloud Imperium games. As we move closer to achieving the critical milestones outlined above, we cannot help but feel an immense amount of appreciation for each and every one of you who shares in the collective dream of Star Citizen. The path ahead is more vibrant than ever, but in some ways, the collective journey together, the moments and fun that people have along the way as we build Star Citizen together is as rewarding as the ultimate destination. And that is what makes this game and community special. From all of us at Cloud Imperium and Myre, we will see you at Bar Citizen, Digital CitizenCon, and in the PTU. All right. Oh man, what a doozy. So that was Chris Roberts and the letter from the chairman. I think I need some time to rest. But okay, what a letter that was. So all in all, you know, like there was some true substance in this with the talk about 4.0, the road towards it, and of course, you know, the persistent entity streaming tech that's coming in with 3.18 that's going to be so important for the game going forwards as an MMO. All right. So anyway, we're going to wrap things up here on YouTube. So thank you so much for watching on YouTube. I hope you enjoyed this. It was a long letter to go through. I was kind of contemplating either doing it this way or, you know, like breaking it up and doing a summary. I'm sure summaries are going to be up on YouTube by other content creators anyway. I might add my own 2 cents, you know, like after reading, just, you know, in case I have any ideas coming through. But otherwise, this has been the Chairman's Letter. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I will see you next time, whenever that is. And keep an eye out for SC lore stuff. I do want to make more of that stuff. It's just finding the time to do so with everything else that we do here on this channel. But for those watching on Twitch, we're going to be continuing with some more Star Citizen stuff, so stay tuned. Until then, though, guys, thanks for watching, and as always, be good.